This is Mission Qualfon, a monthly podcast that takes you inside the workings of our company, but not just the ins and outs of business. We look at the ideas and insights that make Qualfon truly unique. As a company, we are committed to being the best and making each person's life better. Join us as we get to know and learn from people from across the organization. What's their story? What have they learned? And how do they live out Qualfon's mission? Welcome to Mission Qualfon. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Mission Qualfon podcast. I'm Jeremy, and I'm here with my partner, Marisol. Marisol, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Good. You don't actually see me. I'm doing well. Funny thing, we used that opening last week. We mentioned that we kind of borrowed that from Abel Cruz, one of our esteemed colleagues. And I actually do another podcast aside from this one that I do with you, Jeremy. I do a podcast for the therapist for a nonprofit that I work with. And I actually started producing a third podcast now with the same content with some of the mission folk here at Qualfon. And I had them do this intro too for that Spanish version podcast. So Abel's little refrain is now going to be heard every day in English and in Spanish. So
it works, and it works for everyone regardless of where they are in the world. So I think it's great.
So how are you doing?
I'm good. And this podcast is super fun. It's something that we enjoy doing. And it's nice to see more folks are listening. You know, each week we gain a few more regular listeners, and it's great.
You know, in the BPO industry, KPIs, key performance indicators are, we're constantly measuring success. We constantly are looking to be the best. And the thing I love about the podcast is that it's a time that I get to be creative with you.
Right.
Like you and I get to work on this creatively. And we're kind of creating the KPI, because obviously it's downloads, right? But then, what episode is this, 13? But now we have enough episodes that we are starting to be able to track the audience, like we have an audience that's building. And so that's exciting. It's rewarding.
Yes.
And I'm very grateful for it. Gratefulness in all the podcasts I've ever done, in all the different genres that I've been in, gratitude is a common theme. And I'm super grateful for everyone that listens to the podcast and, for the opportunity to do it. This is what I get to do with you, every other week, and it's fun.
So have you received any feedback from our episode last week where we talked with Jennifer DeTiro? She's one of our VPs of sales. If you haven't heard that episode, go listen to it. It's a very good episode. But Marisol, have you heard any feedback?
I kept getting messages about how inspiring she was. Which she was absolutely bold and inspiring. And she even inspired me. That whole podcast inspired me. Jeremy, one of the things I like to do in my spare time is I like to write. And I just recently got published, and she inspired, that podcast particularly inspired a piece that I wrote, and I just submitted, and apparently is going to get published again. So she is very inspiring.
So what's the title of this piece that you have in editing right now?
It's the intersection of humble and bold.
Wow.
She is very inspiring. And if you haven't listened to that episode, regardless of what industry you're in, sales is universal. Check it out. She is fantastic.
We had an interesting discussion as we were publishing the podcast last week. And Jennifer used a term in the discussion that is a common BPO term, especially in the call center side of BPO, butts in seats. And again, common term, anyone that works in BPO has heard that term and probably used that term, let's be honest. But it just refers to the fact that the business model in BPO is that's how they make their money, is they bill for the number of agents they have.
Yeah, so she made the reference, and some behind the scenes of the podcast is we have an advisory team. So, we do the interview, you and I edit, then we submit it for approval. They don't just let us, post it directly.
Willy-nilly, yes.
World Wide Web. And and I'm supremely grateful for the advisory team, because I never want to say or do anything that would cause either our people's department or our legal team cause them any undue stress. Our intention is to just have a podcast about our industry and about our company and about our mission. Mm-hmm. But that phrase came up, and in the background, so we have different hats. Like, you and I are co-hosts for the podcast. I would say you're the editor, and I would say I'm the producer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in my producer hat, when she said the comment, I made a note. And then when we sent it to the advisory board, I didn't share particularly what the moment was. I wanted to see if it was caught, but I did make a note, please review. And a discussion ensued about the phrase butts in a seat. And Jeremy, you put your co-host hat on, and you had your opinion, which I thought was very valuable, that, it was an organic part of the conversation. And it's industry lingo. It's very commonly used, and to the credit of the advisory team, they allowed an open and honest discussion on the subject. When the discussion ended, I just loved that we work for a company where we could have a discussion about the authenticity of a conversation with the phrase butts in a seat.
Right.
And they let us publish it. It went through the advisory board, and they let us publish it, I think, partly because, we organically said, let's have this conversation. And we have 2 guests coming up where we're going to talk about the misconceptions of the industry. We're so passionate about the mission. We're so passionate about our employees, and we're so passionate about the agents and all the programs that we try. We really, truly want to live the mission. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is having the conversation about, the industry and the terminology. Butts in a seat is the mildest of the terms.
Yeah. they get worse from there, yes.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it. Not on this particular episode. We're still in the planning stages, but we have our guests lined up, and we're going to have an open and honest conversation about the industry and phrases like that.
And I would just invite anyone, just so you get the context of this, to go back and listen to that episode. And the concern wasn't about the context. It was, I think, about the term, which just there's kind of a negative connotation. Yeah. No,
it's not maybe a negative connotation. It's a totally
yeah. Good point. Yes.
So it is part of the lingo, and again, it goes back to gratitude. I'm just grateful that we work for an organization that allows us to have this podcast and talk about things like that.
That's a conversation that needs to be had.
Well, this conversation that we have this week with Angel Posada, he's our Vice President of Operations and Client Services in our Dumaguete and Cebu sites. And we have this great conversation about one of my favorite positions in the BPO industry, which is the supervisor role. And so I invite you to listen to another Mission Qualfon podcast. So welcome this week's guest, Angel Posada. He is VP of Operations Client Relations in our Cebu and Dumaguete site. Welcome, Angel.
Thank you, Marisol. Thank you for inviting me.
Angel, you and I mean, we don't work closely together. I've known you for a while. I think the first time I met you was in Guyana, probably about 5 years ago. It's been a while. But you are, in my mind, you're one of the originals here. I mean, you've been here. You're one of these individuals that started as an agent. You've worked your way up through the organization until you're a vice president at this point. Could you share with us just a brief history of your background here at Qualfon?
Sure, Jeremy. I joined Qualfon in 2003, in January 2003, as an agent in Monterrey, Mexico. So Qualfon at that point launched his first international client in Monterrey. And I had the opportunity to join as an agent. After about 3-4 months in production, I was invited to be a quality analyst. So I did that for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then they needed a trainer. So I was promoted to be a trainer and actually trained to be a technical trainer. I was a technical trainer for about 4 months before the opportunity came that we were expanding to Costa Rica. So I was offered the trainer position to move to Costa Rica. So I took that opportunity, and it was really an emergency because the original trainer that was going to go to Costa Rica decided not to go. And they offered that to me on a Thursday. And I said, yeah, sure. I mean, let me consider it. When should I make a decision? And they said, tomorrow, because you're traveling on Monday. So I took that opportunity. I moved to Costa Rica. I worked in Costa Rica for about 6 months. And in Costa Rica, I really had a great opportunity to develop a lot of skills and help a lot of people and put together the team really in Costa Rica. I took over as well in Costa Rica the quality portion of it. So I was the quality and training manager after 6 months. I decided to go back to Monterrey after the Costa Rica trip. And then 2 months later, in 2004, we were expanding to Argentina. So I was selected to be the head of training and quality for our new Argentina site. So I moved to Argentina in March 2004. There, I had the opportunity to lead the team, not only from a quality and training perspective, but also operationally. I was also in charge of the operation eventually, and I grew to be the site director there in Argentina. After that, a couple of years, a lot of work, we had the opportunity to expand in Guyana in 2005. So I was offered the position to be the account manager for the account that I was managing at the time. 2005, that's when I really started traveling a lot. It was dividing my time between Argentina and Guyana. And then shortly after that, 2006 in May, we had the opportunity to expand to the Philippines. So I was actually managing the 3 sites. And ever since 2006, that's where we have now our 2 sites, Cebu and Dumaguete. And I have been managing those business or those sites ever since.
This is what we call, Angel, a whirlwind, because I'm trying to do the math in my head. And so you were an agent, a trainer over quality, you were a site director, you were traveling, and this was all over the space of just a few years.
Correct.
That
Yes.
is unbelievable. Had you ever left Mexico before you went to Costa Rica?
To be honest with you, Jeremy, and this is kind of like the beauty of it, right? Let me give you a little bit about my background. I actually joined Qualfon because I had just graduated from college. Mm-hmm. My degree is applied linguistics. So I started to be a translator, but I joined Qualfon because I wanted to pay my graduation party. In Mexico, when you graduate, you do a big graduation. Uh-huh. And of course, I wanted to pay that and invite my family. So me and a couple of friends, we decided to join Qualfon just for the time being, right? It was our last semester, and we said, let's just do this for the fun of it, just to get the money. We go get the party, and then we are on our way to really what we studied. It never crossed my mind that I'll be here almost 18 years later with all of what I have accomplished from a growth perspective. And the first time that I traveled to Costa Rica, that was the first time for me traveling on an airplane. I've never took a flight before. I've been to the US and everything. Monterrey is very near the US. Mm-hmm. So I've been there several times. But really out of the country to Costa Rica, it was really an experience that I had to live. So I think when you are an agent joining a program or an account, you have to be open to all of the possibilities. And you have to be very attentive to what's going on and be able to get as many opportunities as you can. So I really took the risk. For me, it was an experience, and I decided to take advantage of it.
So that sounds very similar to my experience in the BPO industry. If you've listened to Janet Kino's episode, a lot of us, many of us, never anticipated having a career in BPO. We all sort of started for money, for a job as an agent. I started as an agent. You started as an agent, Jan. And none of us could envision the career almost 20 years later that we have. And I didn't think of this when I was an agent. You know, it was a means to an end. But now, historical, looking back, I don't know, getting older, I see it as such a huge blessing that I walked into the BPO space, because I really didn't have a plan. I didn't have a direction. I was sort of like, I knew what I didn't want to do, but I had no clue what I did want to do. And, you know, here I am almost 25 years later, loving what I do. So it sounds like you found this wonderful career. My questions are, with all that background that you have in operations, what are some of the lessons that you feel you've learned over the years? Like, what skills did it give you that you probably couldn't have found in a traditional outside BPO experience?
When I joined Qualfon almost 18 years ago, I've never imagined that I'll have the opportunity to live and experience what I have experienced. Really, the opportunity that Qualfon gave me to develop skills that I didn't even know I had. You know, that's just the reality. As an agent, when you're walking on the floor, you're expected to take calls and to take care of those customers. But there is a certain passion within the job, specifically for the BPO industry or for what we do, that lives and is stronger and bigger than anything. You know, when sometimes when you're having a hard time and you want to give up, it's not possible to do it. There's something within that keeps that flame alive. Specifically to the skills, I've never had the opportunity before to work with so many people with so many different backgrounds, being able to be exposed to different cultures. You know, I've never been out of Mexico before. So moving into Costa Rica, understanding the culture, understanding the people, understanding their perspective, moving into Argentina, totally different, moving into Guyana, moving into the Philippines. So that is really a unique opportunity. And then the other thing, along the way, being able to interact with many individuals and many different teams, and be able to increase my knowledge in a way, you know, and also with the opportunities as a new agent, the portion of make your life better with the job, right? So what's in it for me? You know, I'm getting my money, but how is Qualfon making our lives better? Well, you have an employment, number one. And then number two, if you talk to an agent on day one, the level of confidence, the English skills, the communication skills, the interaction, that is not yet developed. You talk to the same agents 3, 6, 9 months along the way, it is really an incredible change. So that's what I think for anybody that will be interested to join Qualfon or any BPO for that matter, that's something unique that this job is going to give them.
I think your story really illustrates this idea of growth, and it might not happen as quickly as it did for you, for a lot of people, because you were really in a growth stage with the company. But you're right that there are so many opportunities and chances out there for that new employee coming in, because the business is growing. There's a need for leaders. There's a need for trainers. There's a need for all kinds of people. So I think that's a great point. You know, and I try and make this point all the time working with new supervisors that, guys, hang on, put down some roots, because there are going to be opportunities here for you.
It's sort of like working in operations in a BPO call center space over decades gives you kind of a PhD. You learn speed, responsiveness, all the different types of clients and logos that you work with. You absorb all that information. It's sort of like this living, breathing education that we get that stays with you for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
relate to that?
Yes, certainly. I mean, people think, those guys are just taking calls, right? And yeah, in essence, that's what we do, right? But as a supervisor or as a manager, it's not only having employees taking calls, is make sure they're okay. Make sure that they're aware of the changes of the business. Make sure that you coach them, you guide them, you teach them how to do things. And then along the way, there are challenges, system issues. You have to interact with many different people. You have to talk to person office, the IT team. You have to interact with the vendor managers. You have to interact with a lot of different circumstances and surprises. This business is so surprising. You think you're having a good day, and then you have a challenge. At 9 a.m. That is really unique. To be able to take 1 second to make a decision that is going to have an impact on everybody else. Mm-hmm. So it is really a unique opportunity and a unique job, the one that we have.
When I left to stay home with my children, I became the mom that would sign up for the parties, and I would bring like an Excel spreadsheet. It would be all organized. I'm talking like, yes. I'm not even exaggerating. I took that everywhere into my life, the skill sets that I've learned, I learned in the space. So it's fun looking back now. At the time, I didn't know. You're not aware when you're in it. When I got tapped as a supervisor, it was fairly quickly as well, like Angel's time frame. In my head, I always thought this was a short-term temporary job. I don't even know if it's 25 years. I don't want to do the math because it would make me very sad, but it's been a very long time since those days. But now looking back, I have such a special place in my heart for operations, even to this day. I love all the departments and I wish to support all the departments, but in ops, if you came up in ops, it's just, that you have 1,000 plates on a stick circling at any given time. And for everyone who's listening who is in operations, and I can speak for Jeremy, we really appreciate all that you do because you are the generators of our wonderful company.
Absolutely. I have a question for you, Angel. You, I think, are uniquely qualified to answer this question because of the variety of roles you've played within the company. How have you seen our mission, of making each person's life better, of being the best? How have you seen our mission played out over the last 18, almost 20 years since you've been here?
It has been, particularly over the past 10 years, Jeremy, huge step forward regarding the structure of our mission. Having Roberto, which is, he's a great leader for our mission team. So he is really driving us to make sure that we take care of our team, which is something that we have been doing ever since. But the level of communication that we have, the level of opportunities that we have, the level of development that we have right now with our mission as we have it right now, it's 200 times better than what we initially had, of course, 20 years ago. I've seen a lot of progress. It's easier for people to relate. We have incorporated many of the learnings that we have had over the past few years, a lot of the challenges, we have transformed that into implementations for us to be on top of it. And I do believe that really we are being true to ourselves with each and every individual that joins Qualfon. It's not easy, to be honest with you, because sometimes the new agents, they don't have that perception that really make your lives better, goes really beyond the money. For my story, I can tell you, I was originally in Qualfon for the money, because I wanted to graduate and have a party. But then after that, it was really a passion, right? What's next? What else can I do to continue to deliver? So as a new agent, it's hard because sometimes the focus is somewhere else, right? So they just want to get a job to support their family, etc. So really in their mind, they don't have that realization that each employee is our mission, improving them from day zero to 1 year, 2 years, that's our mission. So I think that's a different way of seeing the mission that I like to share with my team. The focus is really the agents, the employees, and how do we make sure that they understand that we are here to help them improve, to do a good job on, on the phones or taking care of whatever they need to take care, depending on the role. And also to leave them something for whenever they're ready to go to the next position, whether it's in Qualfon or somewhere else, right?
All right, so one topic that I wanted to touch on with the three of us is supervisors. And in this space, in the BPO call center space, it's a position that generally follows, an agent starts on the phones, and this is not 100%, but generally just goes from agent to quality assurance, where they listen to their calls and they learn to coach and work with agents on improving their calls and the quality of the calls. And generally then to a supervisor role. And for me personally, it's one of my favorite positions to work with people in the supervisor role when they get a team to be responsible for. And I thought, Jeremy, you train our supervisors here at Qualfon.
Correct.
Angel, you have so much experience with supervisors. I thought we could have a really great discussion about what kind of advice we would give supervisors from more of a career path, because it's such an interesting role to me. It's the first time many people, get a sense of management, dealing with not just upstream, downstream, and laterally, but is that right? Is that the right word, lateral?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such an opportunity for a whole new career. And it's the first time that they kind of reveals that to them. So what advice would you have for someone in that supervisory role? Or let's say they're just about to become a brand new supervisor.
The advantage that we have right now, Marisol, is that we have professionalized the onboarding to become a supervisor. So we have the Supervisor Academy. We also have, for our account, a supervisor certification. We have them complete the Six Sigma Green Belt certification as well. So all of that knowledge that we have acquired over the last 20 years with multiple accounts, with multiple programs, we put that together into this Supervisor Academy where we teach them how to be a supervisor, right? Before, many years ago, we didn't have that. We have professionalized that and we do the training.
I was going to say, that's not how I came up. So I feel like I was just pulled out of a pool. And this was not at Qualfon. This is a different state many, many years ago. I just got pulled off the floor and put into a supervisory role. So that's a wonderful difference.
Right. Yes. And, to be honest, in fairness, we were doing that 20 years ago, right? Because the client will call and say, I have 300 more FTEs, you want them? And the answer to that is yes. Yeah. And then you turn around and then you try to select the best candidates, but we are not in that position anymore. We learn from that. We transition into a more robust, I would say, setup where I already have trained agents or trained quality analysts that are ready to go to the next step. And Jeremy, you have been leading this with your team on the Supervisor Academy and the Six Sigma. And that is really the key difference, Marisol, that we have had over the past 10 years, where my client can call me at any time and say, I have 300 FTEs, and I already have the staff ready to go for them to be able to take that challenge.
I think one of the things that I always share with these new supervisors, and that is that supervisor role, and you mentioned it, Marisol, that's, I would say 95% of the time for most of these folks, this is their first time in a leadership role. And we begin from the very beginning helping them understand that they're the biggest impact in almost every area. So if we're talking about retention, if we're talking about employee engagement, if we're talking about attendance, the supervisors are going to impact that more than any other position in the company. And we're only as good as our supervisors are, really. I mean, that's the truth. And the one thing I tell them is there's a pie chart, right? There's a pie chart of all the reasons that someone stays with the company. And the single biggest slice in that pie chart by far is the relationship the agents have with their direct supervisor. What does that mean? It means if an agent loves his job, it's because they have a good relationship with their supervisor. Their supervisor is the reason or the biggest reason they love their job. If someone hates their job, guess what? Their supervisor is the biggest reason why they hate their job. And that's just the reality of it.
It's such a tough position. That's why I think I have such empathy from it for that position. I remember when I first had a team, but you could probably tell if you've listened to any of the podcasts, I'm not necessarily the most assertive person at times, but I sort of like my pendulum swung to the other side where I thought I had to be extremely tough and not nice and not caring. This is again not Qualfon and decades ago, but it was a learning experience to learn that just because it was the first taste of authority, how I dealt with it was let me speak kindly of myself. It was an opportunity for growth and improvement.
Here's the thing, Marisol. I think we've learned, right? So we have improved, as I mentioned before. Many years ago, we used to promote our top agents to be supervisors because, in essence, you believe that if you're a good agent, you're going to be a good supervisor. But we all know that's not necessarily the case. And then the challenge that we have is really that onboarding, right? Because you, as an individual, you still have that agent mentality, right? So you still think that your agents that report to you are still your peers. Mm-hmm. So they see you as an equal and not as your superior. So that can be a challenge. But then the other challenge is as well when the new supervisor feels that, you know what, I already made it, so we'll continue to take calls and then I'm the lead here, right? So that transition really was challenging. And what we determined was basically, hey, this agent that we're getting off the phones is not ready when it comes to having the necessary skills to manage employees. So we transition into, okay, what's the correct career path for them? So they need to have certain skills that we need to give them in order for them to understand the role, which to me, I believe, the supervisor is the most important role that we have at the call center. We can have a great manager, a great site director, a great operations director, but if the supervisors are failing on their daily interactions, you won't be able to have much progress in your metrics. So the Supervisor Academy, together with a better career path where an agent will move from an agent position into a quality role for about 6 months to a year, they will learn everything that they need to know about quality. It will, of course, as a quality analyst, interact with multiple agents and be exposed to multiple situations. And that will prepare them to do the jump and become supervisors. So by the time that they're supervisors, they have already managed a team. They have already provided coaching and feedback. They have already, of course, the Six Sigma Green Belt certification, and they're more mature for the role. So that's what we have done over the past 7 years for us to professionalize the supervisor role. And at the end of the day, give better support to our employees, because the last thing that we want is for a new hire or an experienced agent to have a supervisor that is just not fit for the role. I think that's really the biggest concern and the biggest turnoff for anybody.
Angel, thank you so much for coming on. I have one last question that I want to ask you, because there might be a lot of similarities in our background, but the one big difference is my career was going from BPO to BPO to BPO and landing at Qualfon. And yours has been Qualfon the whole time, which, by the way, wow. How lucky are you? So I want to ask you, what makes Qualfon so incredibly special to you? Hello?
That pause is a little long. Little long pause there.
I'm kind of putting it together.
I was hoping you could get into the mission at that point.
No, certainly, and that's really the answer. The answer is the Qualfon mission, but the way in which the mission has evolved, it's hard to put it into words, if I'm honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I have observed through the years with people that I work with in Monterrey, in Costa Rica, in Argentina, in Guyana, in the Philippines, people that I still have contact with, and what I have observed of them after they left Qualfon, or for those that still continue to work with us, is that growth and the result of the mission. I have friends that were my subordinate, I can say that, if I can use that word, that right now they're very thankful for the experience that they have at Qualfon. And for them, it was the same opportunity that it was for me. It was just a 2-month job, right? But then see them now with higher positions, with higher skills, applying the skills that they learn in Qualfon, it's really unique. So the mission it's really key to me staying here and driving that with the team and finally, walking that fine line of continue to drive a business, continue to be profitable, continue to grow, and at the same time make sure that we take care of our people and we have a plan and development career for each one of them. That is really unique, and I don't think I'm going to be able to find that anywhere else. So I'm very happy to be part of Qualfon, and I do hope that anybody that will listen that needs more information or that wants to join Qualfon, they do, because it's really a unique company in that specific approach.
So Marisol, that was a great conversation with Angel. And Angel, Jan, Jennifer DeTiro, and I mean, I could name several, Kim Carr. I mean, I could go on and talk about some of these great guests that we've had, but there's a common theme among all of these individuals. And it is, first and foremost, I think it's work ethic. These are people that all work really hard. And you hear it with Angel's story, especially how far and how fast he made an impact in the organization. And it just makes me feel very confident for, the future of our company when we've got these great leaders, and most of them are really young, a lot younger than me, Marisol, and they are just so good at what they do. And so that always makes me feel really good after I've talked with people like Angel. And it was just a great conversation. And I'm super thankful for the opportunity that I have personally to work with you, Marisol, and have these great conversations with people. This is one of the highlights of my week, right?
Of the work week,
yeah. Either actually doing the interview or editing it, putting it all together. It's just a great opportunity. It's very rewarding for me and a lot of fun for me to do. So I really appreciate that.
I love doing it. I enjoy working with you. And another thing I love about doing the podcast is it allows me to get to know people within the organization. Mm-hmm. Working from home, not being in operations, not being on site, I get to have a conversation with him where I feel like I've gotten to know him better. And now the next time I see him, it would be completely normal for me to engage in a conversation and feel like I know him, or I know him a little more. Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity of a couple people telling me, oh, I listened to this episode or that episode. And I kind of asked them, well, why didn't you listen to all the episodes? And, they'll read the title or they'll read what we're talking about. And they think that they don't have any interest in that subject. And the biggest compliment I have gotten about this podcast is, we've made certain subject matters that you would never think interesting. And on that note, we ask you to please share the podcast, subscribe, and rate and review us because it helps with our stats. And as you know, we are obsessed with our stats.
Yes, we are.
Bye, Jeremy.
Bye, Marisol.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mission Qualfon. Remember, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Mission Qualfon.